Well, that got a great response. Episode 51 of the All Things TechIE podcast. Hi, I'm Justin Dawson. Back-to-back episodes of the All Things TechIE podcast. If you want to get in contact with the program, visit our website, www.allthingstech.ie. Well, remember we were talking about back to work in Dublin, Ireland? Well, now we're going to talk about back to work or working in rural Ireland with tech hubs. It's the All Things TechIE podcast, episode 52.
The All Things Techie podcast is a product of the Extreme Media Network. For advertising and sponsorship opportunities, please visit www.extrememedia.ie. That's XTREME media.ie.
Audio visual from an Irish perspective. This is the All Things Techie podcast.
It's Justin Dawson. It's the All Things Techie podcast, episode 52. I loved going around Ireland and the wild Atlantic way of Ireland during the summer, during the end of the summer with my family. My wife Jen, she keeps on going, oh God, I would love to just have a little house along the wild Atlantic way or a little cottage, and you know, if you could work remotely and then I could do my business and we could all do it remotely. Well, there is a push to do this. The government in Ireland want people to be working from home, stopping the toxic layers of travelling to work in commuter Dublin, really, and Cork, maybe be busy areas of Ireland with heavy traffic. And then places in rural Ireland need redevelopment. You know, like the small villages in Ireland are becoming no more. You know, you had your post office that was beside the local pub, which had a bank maybe beside it as well, or to get your money. A lot of these places are closing down because people are moving online. So how do you push people back into rural Ireland? Well, there's grants for trying to get these hubs set up in Ireland. 5G is improving. I never thought I'd see the day where fibre was out in Lusk Village. We have fibre broadband now in Lusk, and it's getting better. You talk about Elon Musk and wanting to do a satellite broadband. Well, that can cover everywhere. So what's next? You know, will people start living in rural Ireland? I've spoken episode 51 of the podcast of friends that moved up to Donegal in the north of Ireland because they were told during the COVID pandemic that they can work from home, and they've bought houses in Donegal. Now, there's a bit of a pushback by some companies that want people to return to the workplace. Should they have to work 5 days a week? And I've been asking this question. It's on our surveys, as we have polls up on the All Things Techie website and on our social media feeds. Would you like to work from home still? Would you like the hybrid model of working from home? Earlier in the week, I caught up with Eoin Costello. He's a great guy. He has some background in tech. He explained to me how he got involved in tech, and you'll hear this in the program. But Eoin was walking around the town of Dún Laoghaire. Sometimes the network was a bit hit and miss, and it was getting dark. But Eoin caught up with me while walking around, taking his dog for a walk, and trying to explain how technology shouldn't be an advantage of having rural setups and these tech hubs around Ireland. It's the All Things Techie podcast, episode 52.
The All Things Techie podcast. Subscribe, like, and share.
I'd figured out how the computer department in Trinity allocated time. So they took your student ID, and then I think your password was the reverse of your student ID. So I started clocking up huge amounts of time on the CPU, clocking up my classmates. And it kind of came undone at one point because they noticed that it was all coming from one terminal. And I was just trying to get lots of projects done, and I kind of got a rap on the knuckles from the computer department. But what I did for my final year project was quite interesting because I was looking for a topic, and one day I was in the faculty office, and I overheard a conversation. One of the professors had run in sick, and they said, "Oh, we'll have to reschedule that." So it took about 3 big folios of books. You know, 1, the lecture hall capacity; 2, all the student choices; and 3, the commitment to the lecturer. To actually, it took about half an hour to reschedule all his commitments, taking into account students' existing lecture commitments, lecture hall capacity, and existing bookings, etc., etc. So I said, bingo, I think I've got my final year dissertation topic. So in Prolog, which was an artificial intelligence AI language, I coded up what I called the faculty advisor, and it broke it all down into kind of rule-based queries that would help somebody in the faculty office do that kind of rescheduling, etc., much quicker. And because unless you have a knowledge of Prolog, you'd have to actually know the syntax for the code to put in the query. So I built a kind of a natural language processor between the queries and the actual keyboard. So if you typed in an English sentence, it would parse the relevant bits and make sense of it, and then put it into Prolog and come back with the right answer, the optimization of the rescheduling.
Wow, that's early days AI there.
That's 1987.
Wow.
So I was proud as punch, Justin. So I went back to the faculty office once it was all done and I got my grade, and I booted it up, and I said to the lady who months previously had that problem with the rescheduling, and I said, let's say her name was Mary. I said, now look, Mary, put in a query, just type it in any way you like in English about a rescheduling. And she put in, say, Professor Keating, reschedule, politics, first year. And it came back in 0.3 of a second. And I beamed at her and I said, now look how easy that will make your life. That thing out of here. That's our job to do those things. We don't want these computers doing it in a fraction of a second. So that was the end of the faculty advisor. I suppose for me, Justin, it was an early introduction to that kind of the tension between computers and computerization and people. You know, there's a distrust that computers are going to, you know, yes, they'll make a lot of things easier, but at the same time, people like doing things the way they do them, and they also like the security of their jobs. So kind of managing that interface is something which has, you know, been a focus for my career.
Yeah.
You mentioned, go ahead.
I was just saying to our listeners that you've had a wide range. There's college, but you've had a wide range of going from that to domain names. You've been, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've been a member of the Irish Domain Registry and .ie's, and you went from website to what you're doing now. But talk to me a bit about your time with doing websites and how you ended up going from there to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I suppose, Justin, I've had a very wide career. I worked in the London Stock Exchange, and what I did there was I kept track using Lotus Notes of all the kind of
Lotus Notes.
good old days. The kind of announcements of results, directors buying and selling shares, analyst briefings, and all those kind of things. And I actually found tracking them through Lotus Notes, I was actually one of the top performing fund managers for small company stock. But I found after 5 years, I kind of got tired of handing money over to other people to make a go of it. So I came back to Ireland, the 3 stores. But I think where things came undone between me and my dad was that I wanted to try and scale it using tech. And he was successful traditional businessman, liked to do everything, you know, on the back of a metaphorical cigarette box, and liked to keep it all in his head. And I kind of said, look, Dad, that's not scalable. Like, what happens if you, again, fall under the metaphorical bus? And, you know, we needed electronic point of sale readers, in my opinion. We needed automated stock control. But, you know, he wasn't having any of it, Justin, to be honest with you. Years of pushing for this digital transformation, as you'd call it now, but this was back in 1999. I sort of said to Dad, look, either we go down the digital route, which will make our lives much easier, or I'll have to go my own way. And he kind of paused for, I'd say it was at least 2 minutes. And he said, well, son, the best of luck with your new direction. So, I cashed in my chips to the family business.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying to myself, well, what do I do now? And I kind of, the lessons I'd learned in the stock exchange, look for repeat income, look for kind of an infrastructure utility type play, and something that everyone needs. And in 2000, that was domain registrations, web hosting,
Mm-hmm.
and data center services. So in the front page of my house, I set up Laoghaire technology. We traded as register.ie, host.ie. And after 6 months, my partner, she in frustration said, listen, either the business moves out or she is going to move out, because she couldn't get into the bathroom with staff using it. She couldn't get near the coffee machine because the techies are constantly on it.
Mm-hmm.
So needless to say, Laoghaire moved out. And we really focused on process improvement constantly in automation. So, this is at a time where there weren't control panel systems, where there wasn't chain selects for identifying your problem, your tech support problem. And we introduced all of that in text chat back in 2001, 2002. As a result, we won the Irish Domain Registry, the .ie Domain Registries Award for innovation 2 years in a row. We're Ireland's largest .ie reseller. And we had about, at our high points now, before we got approached for buyout, we had around 10,000 customers. And we were able to manage that with just 20 staff. And that was thanks again to the process innovation and automation.
I have to stop you there and say, did your dad ever eat some humble pie and went, good for you, son?
Well, Justin, do dads ever, make it up with their eldest sons? And, I don't know, maybe it's an Irish thing. But, it doesn't tend to happen, no.
No, okay.
But we're on very good terms. He got over it. He got over it.
Yeah.
So I built that up over 8 years, and I got an approach from Colin Pierce's DigiWeb, one of Ireland's largest broadband providers, and I sold that successfully. I then kind of was looking, saying, well, what do I do with all my experience? And I've made plenty of mistakes, and I want to help other people avoid those mistakes. So I decided to go into the not-for-profit sector. I did my dissertation about how institutes of technology could better help scale up and start up businesses. And then I took on the job at TU Dublin Hothouse to run the incubation center there. And we were dealing with 60 or 70 high growth tech related startups each year. Mm-hmm. And out of that, Justin, came the whole idea of how do we join up all the various supports that are available to startups and scale ups, because it's quite fragmented. There's a lot of supports out there, but getting your head around them and putting them all in a line and figuring out how best to work in the ecosystem is a job in itself. So that's when I set up Startup Ireland with some other incubation center managers and entrepreneurs. And the high point for our Startup Ireland initiative was Ireland's first ever National Startup Week, the Startup Gathering. And from a standing start, that was, I only had the idea in December of 2014. And I started jotting down how it could work on a sheet of paper. I looked at the gathering and said, well, look, let's build on that. So we called it the Startup Gathering. I approached the person who delivered the Startup Gathering, Jim Miley, very kindly pointed me in the direction of all the toolkits they'd use, which are publicly available. So we had our kind of rollout strategy. Mm-hmm. And from a standing start in January, we staged it in October, 420 events in 22 counties.
Wow.
And digital really underpinned it. Yeah, absolutely. I was delighted. 19,000 participants across Ireland. And the success was very much digital driven. Mm-hmm. Using all of the various productivity tools, WhatsApp groups, social media accounts. For Startup Ireland was really underpinned the success that we were able to deliver successfully for a very small budget. Wow. And then I kind of said, well, look, what do I do next? And I looked at my hometown here of Dún Laoghaire. I'm walking through it here now.
Yeah.
You can probably hear the waves in the background here. And I just felt, well, look, I've been talking about startup ecosystems and promoting Ireland across the world. and we've run Ireland's first ever startup week. What can I do for Dún Laoghaire town, which back in 2015, 2016 was struggling to find its way.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a high level of vacancies in the town. The kind of business community wasn't clear what's the direction for the town. So yeah, I started Digital Dún Laoghaire. I felt that, look, the whole digitalization of what we're trying to do as a community and support the local businesses where it's at. So that's when Digital Dún Laoghaire was established. And really, we've gone from strength to strength since then, Justin. We launched programs supporting local small businesses under our Love Dún Laoghaire campaign. We started attracting innovation-driven businesses to the town under our Why Dún Laoghaire campaigns. And it led to us winning the Irish Domain Registry, or .ie as they're called now, Best Urban Town of the Year in their digital awards this summer.
Mm-hmm.
We've been endorsed by the European Placemaking Institute. They're called Placemaking Europe, and also the European Digital SME Alliance endorsed our framework. We call it Digital First Communities. How can you attract digital, remote workers, home buyers, and shoppers to your locality?
Now, how experienced does a person coming into your courses or to your workshops need to be? Do they need to be tech driven, or do you take people that are totally novice to the whole situation, want to set up a business and don't know where to begin?
Yeah, so I'm just going to share with your viewers where I am at the moment, which is down at Sea Point here. It's absolutely packed.
Beautiful.
Loads of people in the water swimming at the moment, and just there's a tower behind it. I don't know if you can see the tower. It's a beautiful evening here. Loads of people going in swimming. So we live in a wonderful place. It's fantastic. So sorry, you asked me a question there, and I'm just going to do a screenshot actually, so I can post it at this folder. So cool. Yeah, like really to get started with Digital First Communities, all you need to do is go to our website, digitalhq.ie, and you'll see our toolkits there. And then the programs we run off the back of the toolkits are really for, beginners. You just need to have a basic knowledge of how to use computers, how to use social media accounts. It's very much based on what you can mobilize in your community, rather than having lots of tech smarts. It's very much designed around how we can help do what they can with what they've got. And if they don't have lots of tech skills, then we're not going to get the kind of take up that we want for this program. So we're very much aimed at people who are hugely passionate about their community, but don't necessarily have to have an awful lot of digital smarts to get started with the program.
Now, moving into more present in the past 2 years, has COVID been a help or a hindrance with what you're doing with your projects?
Yeah, so like when we started Digital Dún Laoghaire 5 years ago, jeepers, like I felt, am I, is this going to lead anywhere? Is it going to help anybody apart from the immediate people? And then when COVID hit, and people started saying, like, why would I want to live in cities? Or what? It's not necessary to go and work in a large office anymore. I can be just productive from home. That really was, grist to the mill for us. Like, it was very much aligned with what we've been saying, that working in to be, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we congregate in city in medieval times for safety, and then in industrial times to work in factories, to start hanging out in coffee shops and taverns. But we're now in an era where, with people who are working with digital tools, they're interested in self-actualization in a place they want to belong, in a place they want to bring up their kids, and that doesn't have to be in a city centre. That is better in a town or even rural village where people are contributing to the community. So that's our philosophy: take vacant buildings, repurpose them into digital growth hubs, start marketing your locality to attract more remote workers and home buyers, and that's a recipe for sustainable jobs in your locality.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Like, my wife we were just down in Connemara there at the end of August, and we're going around areas of Connemara going, wouldn't it be lovely if someone just took one of these old buildings and converted it? And do you think the infrastructure is there, Owen? Like, I'm sure you're traveling around the country and just going, okay, well, the broadband and the fiber isn't here yet, but let's hope it is in the not so distant future. I think it's getting better,
It's
definitely.
getting better. And I suppose as well, just keep in mind that the whole 5G networks to run over the mobile towers are
Mhm.
going to be just as powerful as anything you can get over a cable, over fiber almost. So that's coming. And then you have things like Elon Musk's initiative on satellite broadband, where how we've traditionally seen broadband coming down the copper from, Aircom back in the day, is going to be a legacy system
Mhm.
within three years. So that's one thing. And then two, I suppose in terms of infrastructure, I kind of, many people would see a lot of the things in rural areas, the decay of old buildings, particularly old schoolhouses, mills, courthouses. I'm trying to reframe the debate and say, well, actually, they are assets. They were built for an economic purpose 100 years ago.
Correct, yeah.
And if we stop seeing them as liabilities, and they're in many cases they're state assets, so they're owned by the Department of Education, they're owned by the state. If really sort of blue sky in it here, the state was to say, okay, there's an international model for this called Selena.com. They've raised 225 million. They set up co-working spaces, in really interesting places around the world. So at the front of the facility, you've got the co-working space. At the back, you've got the living quarters. So you get the best of both worlds. You get a Selena.com annual pass, and you can work for some of the biggest tech companies while seeing amazing places around the world without missing a deadline work-wise. So
Wow.
imagine, right? Check it out. It's worth looking at,
Yeah.
Selena.com. So I had this idea. I said, geez, imagine if, the success of the Wild Atlantic Way was replicated by overlaying it with a network of hubs. And this new initiative called the Connected Hubs.ie, launched by the Department of Community and Rural Development.
Okay.
Then come across and check them out,
Yeah.
connectedhubs.ie. So they're charged with kind of creating and supporting a national network of hubs. So what if you took what connectedhubs.ie are doing and then looked at this huge footprint of vacant school buildings, which have a big curtilage, big space around them,
Hmm.
and start, as a state initiative, buying the land or transferring to the Department of Education, getting social enterprises, to take responsibility for the mobilizing and marketing of the area using our digital first communities model, and then repurposing these vacant, beautiful historical buildings. Some of them are 120 years old, really well built, repurposing them into that Selena.com model of co-working space at the front and then an accommodation block at the back. And then you could buy an annual pass. You could work for Google or Salesforce or Microsoft or wherever you want to work for 12 months, trekking along the Wild Atlantic Way and get the best of both worlds.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, but not only that, like you're talking about the big companies, the Googles and whatever, and the employees being sent. You know what? Like, why should like this whole COVID environment? And there's a sort of way I brought up the program, Owen. Is like, why should we have to go back to the commute of hundreds of people cramming themselves onto trains? Like you live in Dún Laoghaire, so the Dart is busy at rush hour, but like I'm living out in Lusk at the moment, and then say why would I want to travel into the city centre anymore on a busy train every morning and try and get back in rush hour traffic? I know that I had 2 hour commutes at times when I was working in UCD. Why would I want to do that anymore? Compared to the flexibility of at the moment working from home. But why, if for people that are setting up their own businesses,
But the
probably.
bigger question, Justin, is not even why would you want to do it, but why would your employer or you do it? Because it's very cost ineffective
Mhm.
having you and millions like you on the road for an hour commute each way, potentially diesel, greenhouse gases, wasted time and energy on the commute, and it just doesn't make sense economically. And the whole green economy and the circular economy, it's not sustainable. And so, the government, Minister Heather Humphreys in particular, is really trying to lead this temporary the changes caused by the pandemic become and speed up a serious societal change that challenges the narrative that you can only work in a city, that you can only work in a factory, because they are myths. They're myths, and the pandemic has shown it. And there were concerns, productivity is lower and you don't get the water cooler chat effect. Okay, fair enough. So why not have a hybrid working model where you would go into the office or go into the college campus 2 days a week, and the other 3 days a week you're working from a hub, hopefully, or in your neighborhood, or working from home. That's the model that we believe is sustainable.
The negative thoughts that people will have. Okay, we have the COVID end of things and health, and is these environments going to be cleaned and sanitized? And I'm sure you're looking after that. But the other end of things, away from health, is probably people think about, well, what's the security implications that if I go into an area, okay, maybe I'll bring my laptop, I can work in a hub, but I say a lot of these bigger firms are thinking, well, is it secure if someone was doing a Zoom call or a video conference call? Yeah. I'm sure you get these questions all the time.
Well, that's an interesting point, Justin. And look, you're an AV expert yourself. I would suggest there's a severe failure of the technology to keep up here. As a kid, I remember watching Star Wars, and do you remember, was it C-3PO or R2-D2, the droid with the wheels, projected a message from Princess Leia in a hologram? And as a kid, I thought, wow, that's going to start happening next week or next month or next year. And 30 years later, we have no technology that allows augmented or virtual reality to make life-like experiences out of technology intermediated calls or whatever. We're still looking at flat screens. I'm looking at you on a phone, which is progress. It's progress. But when you think of what's possible, the technology is way, way behind what we need. So, if you had a decent VR or a proper kind of hologram-based experience, then a lot of the things that people worry about, just wouldn't be happening. So, you'd have those water cooler chats. So you'd have the sense that you're talking beside somebody. So that's one side of the technology argument. Your second part was about security. Well, again, if the major tech companies can't keep us secure, on VPNs and HTTPS protocols, you really have to wonder, are they doing their job at all? Like, the technology has to make us secure, and of course we all have to take care about making sure our network traffic is encrypted, but it's not beyond the tech companies to make sure that happens. And there's a little bit of education needed naturally. A lot of small business owners don't know what they don't know. So that's an education process that needs to happen. But I think that the technology has lagged this whole possibility. And I think in the next 12 months, you're going to see a lot of interesting announcements. I do remember Apple had registered a patent for hologram-based TV, etc. I don't know why that hasn't been progressed, but who knows what's just around the corner. And the other thing I'd kind of, from the point of view of a hub and confidentiality, there are now directional microphones, etc., which can keep your voice completely focused into the speaker. Like I've been in shared co-working spaces where you've kind of had business calls going on around you, which probably isn't ideal from anyone's point of view, both from me trying to concentrate, but also from the confidentiality of the clients that they're talking to or about. So, again, we need better technology. We need technology that can make it so that if I'm speaking into a mic right in front of my mouth, my voice doesn't carry. I don't know, again, you're the techie, Justin. You're the AV guy. Like, what about a parabolic mic, which, if you're having a confidential call, it doesn't travel beyond 2 centimeters of the mic. So you could be in a shared co-working space and no one can hear you talking.
Definitely we've improved the whole idea of headphones and the deck and being able to have noise cancellation headphones. But like you're saying, yeah, if we could create something that was just a microphone that you could whisper into it, and you could have a conversation. Like I've seen some protocols that come out even with the whole idea of COVID and wearing a mask. Well, we can put a microphone behind a mask, and look, if we're going to be if we're going to have to wear a mask for the next while or so, why not put a microphone behind us and have the conversation that way?
I did see a mic advertised the other day where the noise cancellation of background noise is 100%. So dogs barking at home or kids, so it's able to cancel the noise in that direction. But I think from a point of view of a shared co-working space, you need to be able to, if you're having a confidential call in a shared space, that your voice doesn't transmit beyond the mic as well to fellow co-workers.
I know, and of course, the next thing that could happen is, cameras are getting more and more sensitive, and we can put nano dots on lip movements. So maybe it's all going to be lip synced. Maybe we don't have to talk at all in the future.
Well, now you're talking, Justin. There's a guy who does digital transformation programs, Ionology, Niall McKeown, and he shared with him doing some of his digital transformation programs in Saudi Arabia. And it was in real time translating what he was saying along the bottom of the screen. I said, geez, Niall, how'd you do that? And he said, it comes free, built into Microsoft Slides.
Wow. God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have the option to translate in real time what you're saying to the slides. And he said it was perfect. So exactly your point, Justin, you could have zero talk and actually the other person hearing you talk because of the interpretation, by the technology of your lip sync. Now, you'd need to start, it brings up other challenges, and you'd have to start practicing your Charlie Chaplin silent movie. Like, I'd have to be talking to you like...
Yeah, exactly.
And trying to remember.
Yeah. Or when you mutter something under your breath about a boss, you want to be very careful about you mutter under your breath at that stage.
Now you're talking, especially when you're around your wife and family. Yeah. It could get very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so where's your next hope of your next hub? Where I know that you've been very busy with Dún Laoghaire, but where would your next world?
Well, I suppose we kind of see our Dún Laoghaire as our living lab. So we don't really intend creating a kind of a franchise or a network of hubs. What we want to do is encourage other people through connectedhubs.ie to set up their own hubs. Right. So what we're doing is we treat our Dún Laoghaire facility, which is supported by Bank of Ireland. They donated space to us as a kind of a living lab. So in a living lab, you test what works, digital, what kind of frameworks and tools work to help support local businesses, help communities market themselves, and then we teach those through what we call our Digital HQ Academy. Mm-hmm. So we sort of see our remit, our mission expanding more in that line than actual more and more physical locations.
Okay, and you talked about different programs that sort of links in with it. Do you see more of a European base when things open up more with travel and stuff, that more Europeans might take on board the whole idea of the accommodation and, like you say, doing the world event? Okay.
Absolutely. The feedback we've had from the European Digital SME Alliance and Placemaking Europe is there's nothing like what we're doing. There's nothing like this digital growth hub, as we call it, in our model in Europe. So there's a lot of interest, and there's a great opportunity here, Justin, for Ireland Inc. to be the first and the number one in this leading this whole new societal change in Europe. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're hoping to do. So our Digital HQ Academy is start helping other European countries, associations get their kind of digital first communities up and running, trained through our hub in Dún Laoghaire. But we're now in a situation where it's inevitable. Like, why would you want to, almost like filing into a church and sitting at specific times for a mass, on someone else's terms, put yourself through that. You want flexibility. You want learning that's, adjustable to your needs. There's so many different learning styles. There's so many different modules that people will be interested in a variety of ways. So like the future is blended learning. Like, yes, there'll be certainly physical presence, but a lot more of it's going to be online based. But Justin, I go back to the point that technology has failed us at the moment. We need much more tactile and interactive based technology, not flat screens like how we're trying to engage with each other this evening. So technology has to we need a real step forward in the technology to make the experiences as real. And then, education could be easily delivered. And that kind of ties back in with our point about rural hubs. Like if you want to move your family to a rural location and the school, hasn't got any space or it's a very rigid structure, that's a problem. Whereas if you have blended learning and your kids can learn a bit from home, from good technology devices, as well as being a bit in the classroom, that frees everybody up.
Yes, absolutely. Eoin, if people want to hear more about your project and how to get involved, and even if they're down in the rural areas of Ireland, I'm sure all our international listeners are going to be very interested in this whole project in Ireland. Where can they find out more information?
Well, I point you in two directions, Justin. One, I did a TEDx talk about this whole project and town-centre regeneration. So it's available on YouTube. If you just do a search, Eoin Costello TEDx, and the title is Do What You Can With What You've Got. And then the second place is just to go to our website, www.digitalhq.ie.
Well, that's all from episode 52. Our thanks to Eoin Costello for joining us on episode 52 of the All Things TechIE podcast. As always, the opinions expressed are not necessarily those of the companies and institutions that I or the guests represent, or the sponsors of this show. So hopefully you agree with some of my thoughts. If you don't, well, we'd love to hear your comments. Visit our website, www.allthingstech.ie. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you very, very soon.
The All Things TechIE podcast is a product of the Extreme Media Network. For advertising and sponsorship opportunities, please visit www.extrememedia.ie. That's XTREME media.ie.